knowing that you're overwhelmed.
And this is extremely difficult, to feel overwhelmed or to be overwhelmed and not even know that you're overwhelmed. Those are hard places to be.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of 5, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. of Dad Central, and the man we need to ask, since it's finally getting cold enough, will there be a hockey rink built this year?
Well, thanks for asking. Drew Solon from Dad Central. And no, there will be no rink built this winter. At least not in my backyard.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, you're in a different location. That's right. Okay, there right. You go. Okay, all right. Well, I don't make assumptions. You got to ask. So,
all right. Ed, are you going to build a rink this winter?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. That is not happening.
We are on the same page.
Absolutely not. That we are on the same page, and we're on the same show called the Dad Central Show, and it's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care, because Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. And today we're going to be having a great conversation about how overwhelmed dads can better communicate with their families. And we're coming to holiday season. There's an increased sense of overwhelm, but a lot of dads that we communicate with and share with us, they feel overwhelmed almost 365 days a year. So, Drew, what are your opening thoughts on this conversation topic?
Well, we're going to hit on 3 key things. I think one, we're going to talk about the root causes of becoming overwhelmed. We're going to talk about the power of communication to help support ourselves and our relationships during overwhelm, and then practical processes that will help you work more collaboratively with your family. So I think those are all very important topics. What about you?
Yeah, I think this is always an ongoing challenge for many dads that we work with and we support and we assist. And again, as I said, we're recording this during the somewhat holiday season in 2024. And I'm sure that either pre, during, or post, we're going to hear about some dads with some stories when it comes to this conversation topic. So as we say, we're talking about how overwhelmed dads can better communicate with their families on the Dad Central Show. Let's talk about some of the root causes of dads being overwhelmed. What are some of the causes either you or you hear fathers talking about from you?
Yeah, well, I think I'll start reflecting on my own experiences. So I think work can often be a significant stressor. Health can be a stressor and has been a stressor for me, as well as, the expectation of what family life, maybe what you envision family life to be versus what the reality of family life sometimes presents. So those maybe expectations that are off and don't match up with your visions and your hopes or your dreams, again, in all those areas, whether it be relationships, work. And I think that causes stress. When I reflect on my experience, all of those, especially when work stresses picked up, my goal was to continue to grow my career. My goal was to do a great job. My goal was to contribute meaningfully and to my team. And my goal was to make sure that I could continue to do that well, even in the face of mounting, let's say, pressures at home with, I had twin daughters. And then before they turned 3, I had a newborn son. We had a move. There were some changes in my ex-wife's at the time, her working situation. So there's a lot going on. And then we had some family death, untimely death, and then some unexpected health challenges with our daughter at the time. And quite frankly, I just kept moving on. Again, from my personal experience, I kept moving on. I can handle it. I came from this idea that if you work harder, you'll get through these things. But I didn't recognize the importance of rest and asking for help and getting support and when to actually do these things. So I don't want my only experience to be what I'm referring to in terms of root cause of being overwhelmed, but I certainly have that as the main emphasis that I can look back on and say, wow, I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was overwhelmed. And I think the biggest overwhelm came after my grandmother died. I just been put into a new position, much more leadership, more responsibility, more expectation. I didn't even really stop to take time to grieve. And then I also never had a person pass on in my life that was close to me. So I had these unrealistic ideas of what it was to actually grieve. It's like, why don't I feel more sad? Why am I not crying more? Like, I just feel like I got to go, go, go. So I know I've shared quite a bit here, but I think there are many causes. And what dads need to, I think, take from this is look at what's going on in your life and see where you're being pushed maybe beyond what is reasonable or is even healthy than what's you can be handling, and also look to others who are around you who know you who might be able to offer you some feedback. Anyways, what are your thoughts, Ed? That
No
was
problem.
long.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think I want to add another variable. And I think actually on another platform, I recently hosted a conversation with a group of men on how they handled loss of a loved one. And that was a whole other conversation. Actually, one of the gentlemen who was sharing there, he had his wife passed away when she was 40 years old, and she was diagnosed with lupus at 12 years old. Doctors said, "You'll never get married, you'll never have kids." Well, when she transitioned, she had 5 children, plus she had 2 master's degrees. But the pressure that he's living with now, and he's saying, going out and dating, he says, just the pressure of taking care of the kids. He wants to have a relationship, and he's saying, it's not really easy when someone says, "So what's your marital status?" "Well, I have 5 kids." Okay, there's pressure there too. So there's a lot of, pressure in regards the loss of a loved one, I think is a conversation topic we should. I don't know if we ever have really gone in depth, but I think it'd be a great conversation in regards to dads and that. But another challenge I see too is societal norms on that provider mindset, which exists with a lot of families, that a lot of dads can break down their communication style or outward communication because just of the stress of what I'm supposed to be like, how I'm supposed to communicate like a dad, societal norms, whether it's media, whether it's cultural, those things add to the pressures of, feeling overwhelmed as a dad. Like you're just going this. And like you said, when you were sharing that you didn't take time for yourself. And giving yourself grace and giving that time in order to reduce the overwhelm. And I think also too, knowing that you're overwhelmed, right? You can't resolve the overwhelm until you make that admit to yourself, saying, "You know what? I'm overwhelmed." Like one of the keys that I know when I'm overwhelmed, when I can't find my car keys, I know I got too much going on. So I have those signs that, when I can't find my car keys, or there are times I'll leave the house and I'll forget something important. So I'm always getting to the point now in the car, I'm having a little checklist. Do I have this? Do I have this? Do I have that? So and society keeps on demanding more from dads, not less. So just want to put that there.
Yeah, well said. Thank you for sharing. So I think if I were to summarize it, what the causes of feeling overwhelmed are, I would say having an internal expectation or desire with experiencing significant external barriers or limitations to achieve them. That's kind of my thought, because when I reflect, I had these internal expectations or desires of how I was supposed to be or what family of life was supposed to be like. And then it seemed like everything was coming against it that I had no control over. So I felt disempowered and I felt like I wasn't sure what to do. And so the overwhelm came when I tried to take control, but I wasn't seeing results. So those are just, I think, if you're a dad, reflect. Is that really what's going on for you? And is that maybe the root cause? And when then, as we continue this conversation, we'll talk about the importance of one, that awareness, and then two, how communication can be so powerful in engaging those around you to help support you, but also for you to be able to get clarity for yourself.
Makes sense. A nice segue. We're going to talk now about the power of communication. Your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think it's in the top three of issues within marriage, right? So when it comes to being overwhelmed, it's like that fight, flight, or freeze response. Like there's a potential threat, and your focus narrows, your body tenses, all these things happen, but you aren't necessarily thinking rationally. You may not even be communicating rationally. And so I think that's the challenge. The power of communication is one, it engages those around you and helps bring them alongside you as opposed to opposing you. And I think it can also powerfully influence for good or for negative how it's used. And so communication is, I think, foundational to any healthy relationship. And again, that's what I'm using as the model here. Healthy relationships require effective, respectful, open, vulnerable communication. And when you have healthier relationships, the research is pretty unequivocal, you are much more resilient. You're much more able to handle the stresses of life that come against you and do it in effective ways. Relationships are a huge buffer, but they're also a huge source potentially of stress. And so that's why communication to me is so important to helping in these times of overwhelm as a dad. What are your thoughts?
I think that's so important, and I think also too an impacting factor on this is how were dads raised when it came to communication? What models did they have in communicating? Because I know a lot of dads that I assist, their dads were you were when you were growing up, you're seen and not heard.
Yeah,
So
they were the strong, silent type. Their dad didn't really communicate
exactly.
much unless they were angry.
Exactly, exactly. So that's what they model. They replicate what they emulate. So that's what they saw, that's what they see as best. And sometimes you have to say, was that really best? And also if you replicate it, what the way you raise, how well is it working with your kids? Right? So the power of communication, especially when it comes to family, spouses, maybe finding out what's their best communication style. Like I know in business, when I meet a new client, I always ask them, what's the best way to get in contact with you? So I think we also have to do it with our family. And not every child and not every person communicates the same. So taking some time to invest in finding out what the best communication style, what communication style gets the best results for both of you and for your family in regards to the power of communication. Because like I said, it's a great topic. The power of communication, right? If there's no communication, it becomes a deficit. It's like a it's so it's a lack. It becomes a lack. So we want to look at the power of communication, and also too, when you think of communication, it's not a one-stop thing. It's a journey, right? Because some days it may be great, you want to aim for as many graded, but sometimes it isn't going to be great. So what are those measures you can take when the communication isn't good? So I think it's a continuous journey in regards to getting to that place where you're doing effective communication, and also things too, emotional barriers. So if you're a dad, if you're overwhelmed, if you're frustrated or you're fatigued or you feel guilty, how does that impact your communication skills? One of the things I learned a long time ago was an acronym HALT, HALT. Never get angry when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So Drew is smiling. So it sounds like you may have heard that before. So I think taking those things into account and also look at what barriers are there to powerful communication. Is there a lack of time? Are there distractions? And Drew mentioned earlier on the vulnerability. Find out what is preventing you to have that powerful communication. So I'll just leave it at that. I could go deeper, but I'll stick a pin on it there.
Yeah, well, something came to mind as you were sharing, and we're always communicating something. Sometimes we're just not aware of what that message is being received from others. And so that's why I want to go back to this idea of healthy communication, which builds healthier relationships. And so when you are overwhelmed, your communication is, yeah. And let's go back to the basics. This is that famous Stanford study, I think it was like Albert Morabian, where he showed that 55% of our communication actually comes from our body language. 38% of it is our tone of voice, and only 7% are the actual words we say. And so even when you're not saying a word, you are communicating significantly. You know this to be true when either you have been in a room and you've seen somebody walk in the room and you knew right away, take a wide berth, don't go near so and so, they're having a day. Or you've seen the opposite where people walked into the room and you're like, man, I'm just drawn to them. I don't know what it is. And they haven't said a word. We as dads, and this is another phrase that I heard from Dr. Peter Jensen way back when, is we have the power to be a thermometer or a thermostat. And so, meaning that we can set the temperature of the relationships through our communication, body language, tone of voice, and words, or we can be, and we'll typically see our children, our family will be the thermometer. They will respond in kind to what we bring. So I think I've shared a variety of things, but I think the main emphasis I'm trying to say here is that even when you don't feel like you're communicating anything, you are actually communicating. And so that's why it's important to have this awareness of what's actually going on for me. That I am overwhelmed, and then being able to engage in healthy ways with those around us to help support our moving through the difficult, and this is extremely difficult, to feel overwhelmed or to be overwhelmed and not even know that you're overwhelmed. Those are hard places to be. So I just think it's really important that we recognize what we are always communicating, and are we seeing the signs from others around us who are really close to us that we're communicating in positive, healthy, life affirming, relationship building ways? Or are we communicating in ways that are tearing down and destroying or disrupting our relationships from being healthy? Because they're a huge buffer to help us move through the periods of overwhelm.
Okay, well, let's move to our final conversation topic, practical process to work with your family during stress. Go for it.
So, the practical process for me is under that assumption that you are somewhat aware that you're feeling overwhelmed. So, first and foremost, I think you need to clearly, honestly, and with some element of vulnerability, if you're in a relationship with your wife or a partner, that you are having these feelings of overwhelm. And whether you know exactly what's causing them or not, it's important that you do this in a way that your partner can see into and understand a little bit of your experience. Because the best thing is having somebody who's alongside you through this challenge, as opposed to feeling like you're on an island or feeling like you're not engaging them when they really want help. And I'm pretty sure every single partner, dad's partner, wants to help you, wants to be there for you, wants to love you, wants to nurture you through these difficult times. So, step number one, you've got to be able to engage them and communicate to them in ways that are honest, respectful, and with some vulnerability so they can come in and meet you there. That's not easy for many dads to, we'll say, ask for help, or the age old joke, dads don't ask, or men don't ask for directions. Well, you got to first of all, you got to get over yourself, because the reality is we all need some support at times. And if you're overwhelmed, you need some support. And your best support is those around you who know you well. And if you're not in a relationship, then find trusted friends, mentors, anyone who is a trusted part of that sort of close circle that you can share honestly, respectfully, and vulnerably about what's going on for you. Then I think you need to become aware and intentional in how you are communicating in your relationships with your children, right? Impatience, intolerance, frustration, those come out in our tone of voice, in our body language, and those are powerful communication tools. So monitor your body language. I've talked about this before in articles. How often are you smiling at your child? When you're overwhelmed, you're probably not smiling very much. Smile, eye contact, get down on their level, and communicate that you're there with them, presence. Those are important pieces that your children need to experience from you, even in those times when you're overwhelmed. So you've got to work on your stuff so that you can put it aside in those moments to engage in a healthy way. And then I think finally, strategically, you need to get the help and support that's going to help you process these feelings of overwhelm, but also give you practical strategies to de-stress, or to set up boundaries, or to make some changes in your life that are reducing those feelings of lack of control or whatever might be contributing to the overwhelm in the first place. So I think there's a part here I haven't mentioned, but I think is valuable is that, conveying hope or optimism or reassurance to our children in these times is important. I mean that you don't have to divulge everything to them because again, children at ages and stages, their maturity level will differ. But to carry and shoulder this burden without engaging or thinking that your children know what's going on. Listen, our kids are perceptive. They're intuitive. They know what's going on, right? They're picking up on that. And so at some point you have to let them know that, hey, I had a bad day today and I was really, worn out, but I want you to know tomorrow's going to be a better day and I'm going to be, and let's take 10 minutes and we'll go and we'll play, this and we're that, because guess what? We're going to get through this. Dad's going to be okay. And you don't need to worry. We as parents are taking care of you and everything's going to be fine. That's our role and that's our privilege, but it's also our responsibility as parents to set that tone and temperature. Those are my thoughts.
Good stuff. Well, as we ended off today, as we said, we covered three areas today: the root causes of dads being overwhelmed, or some of them. We talked about the power of communication, and then practical process to work with your family to reduce stress. Drew, do we have a resource that could help dads go through this process?
Well, I think our resource study is designed to help 7 steps to, calmer, more peaceful parenting, really reducing some of that overwhelm and the yelling that happens is probably a valuable one. It takes you through that self-reflection process, but also how to communicate and engage effectively with others.
Wonderful. Well, as always, I want to say thank you. As always, our show is presented and sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care, because Dove Men Plus Care believes care that is the best of the men, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. As always, we want to say thank you so much for taking the most valuable thing you have, your time, to listen or watch the show. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourselves grace. Be well.